And
Sorry.
okay, I'll start again for the recording. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. This is the second meeting of 4 meetings in the year for VaCCRA. This is our 20th year in business. And we thank you for joining us. It is so encouraging to see more people loading up on the Zoom call. And our entire purpose is to share our practices and learn from other communities what practices they found successful for them. My name is Penny Jez. I'm the VaCCRA president, and we have all our officers this year with us. And I think as they come up to do their presentations, I will announce them and who they are. But I want to go ahead and welcome, I see our speaker, Dr. Maddox is here, and welcome to her. She's new to VaCCRA meetings, and we're happy to have her. She's got some extraordinary data to share with us. I also see people from the past who are here. I think I see Rita Taggart from Westminster Lake Ridge, and I see a couple other people that I know from, and they've disappeared off the screen. So without further ado, and I'm Sarah Hopgood. Are you Sarah Hopgood in the corner? Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Sarah.
New director for Westminster Lake Ridge. So we're happy to help welcome her as well. And pardon me if I miss anyone. Let's stick to our meeting script. And I'd like to introduce Susan Hindeleiter, who is our past president. And she started in VaCCRA as a treasurer. She served for 2 years in that role, and then they conscripted her to be president for 4 years. And she's been an extraordinary help to me in learning the ropes. So Susan has the introduction for our speaker, Dr. Maddox. So the floor is yours, Susan.
Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Maddox, for joining us. Dr. Maddox is the professor and chair of the Department of Health Administration and Policy at George Mason University. She's had a distinguished career beginning as a nurse and holds a PhD from Columbia University. Now she's specializing in health policy analysis and health services research, from health reform to understanding the impact of financial arrangements and delivery systems on healthcare quality to healthcare workforce planning. Dr. Maddox joined George Mason University in 1995 from the National Institutes of Health. At Mason, she's developed the graduate program in health administration and policy and established the health services research program in the Center for Health Policy, Research and Ethics. As a researcher, Dr. Maddox's work has involved the evaluation of state telehealth programs, proposed federal programs, and funding allocation methodologies to health workforce planning. Dr. Maddox will be addressing health workforce strategies, their causes, consequences, and what can be done about them. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Maddox.
Thank you so much. I actually really appreciate being here and having an opportunity to speak with all of you. I have a lengthy series of slides, but I'm going to quickly go through them. I hope it's not going to be what is referred to as a shooting by PowerPoint slides, but I wanted you to be able to have them, and I want to leave time for questions at the end, because I know that given the work that you do in VaCCRA, you are likely to have questions that may kind of, I would say, you may be more interested in what the forecast for workforce is. In other cases, you may be more interested sort of in some of the strategies for dealing with what I can tell you looks to be some tough times coming ahead. I also want to acknowledge our colleagues here from Westminster. I was really delighted to speak with them in March and learned a lot about Westminster and really enjoyed that dialogue that I had with them. So in any event, please do call me PJ. And I'll be happy to get started here anytime that it's good for you all.
Go right
I
ahead.
think we're ready.
Okay.
Okey-doke. Let me see if I can share my screen. Here we go. All right. Isn't it great when technology works, and it's really the pits when it doesn't, right? I'll tell you. So I have to just move you all just a little bit here to get into the correct view. Why? So as I said, we're going to be talking this morning about Virginia's workforce and what is happening in terms of the health and the other support service workforce that is very much central to what you are doing. But I've also included information about the general, a number of health workers as well, principally because it affects so many of us, who are associated with, I would say, that are concerned about and associated with the care of individuals that are actually growing by the day, and I count myself among them, as a matter of fact. I want to make sure I have the full screen on for you here. Okay.
Hit
Here
the
we go.
slideshow up at the top.
Yeah, it's just not cooperating
There you
with
go.
me. It wasn't there. Now we got it. Okay. So allow me to start first with sort of what the national outlook does look like. I can tell you that there are a number of challenges that lie ahead. In general, nationally, employment in health occupations is growing much faster than average for all other sectors and all other types of occupations. In most of them are running somewhere in the neighborhood of basically 5 to even 25% compared to other types of occupations. And on the median for all others, healthcare is growing at a rate, all occupations growing at a rate about 15% each year compared to other sectors that are seeing employment growth running at around 6% each year. The projected growth and the increased needs for healthcare workers are related to a number of things. First, aging of the population and the increased demand for health and social support services. But there is also increased demand for those services because in recent years, there has been an expansion of insurance coverage and options and new venues for the providing of services, especially those growing in what we are calling the home and the community-based service front. And we'll be talking a little bit more about that later. The other reason that they are growing fast is because the workforce itself in almost every area of health occupations are aging in place. And you'll see what that looks like here in just a moment. Note that the areas of occupational therapy assistance, home health and personal care aides, physical therapy assistants, the speech and language pathologist, and substance abuse and behavioral disorder counselors are all driven by home and community-based services. These are not, the growth there is not being driven by traditional inpatient hospital care or even traditional long-term care. So this is a sea change from what has been happening in workforce in the past. But I want you to see how quickly occupations such as nurse practitioners who are filling in for the shortage of primary care physicians is growing here, the rate at which they're growing. And again, this is an annual growth rate, which is really quite shocking. The highest rate of growth, however, is among home and personal care aides, where not only is the total demand for them increasing, it is very, very difficult to fill, in part because of the stability or instability of this particular occupational group in their various employment areas. Virginia's health workforce outlook in general is actually higher than any other occupation. And you see before you what it looks like as we slice and dice these. Obviously, it is not just those individuals central to home and community-based services, but these are individuals that do affect the health and health-related services for all individuals. And if you're wondering why veterinarians is here, is because they are actually key as a part of our broader public health infrastructure and the work that they do with regard to animal safety and animal infectious control that backs into human health and infectious diseases as well. Virginia projections for all health science degrees, and that's anything that it also relates to personal and direct care services, as well as those that are support services and sciences related to health and the health industry, is also growing at a very rapid rate. And as you can see, Virginia actually matches the growth for all health science occupations with the national figures. Most of that is being driven by the highest areas of concentrations of where people live. Northern Virginia, Hampton Roads in the Norfolk area, the Capital Region, of course, followed by Shenandoah Valley and so on. So for those of you that are here and used to working in and around the Northern Virginia area, you can see the degree to which this very broad Northern Virginia catchment area really outpaces almost every other area in Virginia by literally thousands. And in the case of Northern Virginia, really double and triple the rate that we see it in most other areas across the state. Unfortunately, while this is the total demand, some of these other areas that are more rural, such as the area down here in South Central, the proportion of the population and the proportion of the individuals that work in health, especially home and community-based services, there's a much higher proportion needed of those health workers to their population in these rural areas. And in those rural areas, health, social services, home and community-based services tends to be the dominant employer and actually predicts the economic vitality or circumstances. So while they represent a much smaller number in Virginia overall, they're much more fragile and dependent upon the adequacy of health workers, not only to meet their service and care requirements, but also because of the impact on their economies as well. So when we look at the health workforce demand, it comes from both facilities, home-based services, and community-based services. And these latter two are the two that are growing the fastest. And it includes those traditional roles that I mentioned in the first couple of slides. But I will tell you, every one of these subsectors is growing quite rapidly and has a demand for both the professional, the technically skilled, and the semi-skilled workforce among them. There isn't a single area that is not going to be affected or isn't probably being affected right now by their ability to both employ individuals at the numbers that they wish, but also employ them with the backgrounds that they wish to have. Virginia, by the way, ranks roughly in the middle. It's 33rd of 50 states for home health providers. So we fare a little bit better than roughly half the US, but we are still not adequate in terms of our ability to supply a workforce that is actually needed in this rapidly growing health sector. And I will tell you, Virginia's growth in the home and community-based sector is much faster than in most other areas of the United States. We have broadly health professional shortage areas that are federally designated in three very important areas that span Virginia. Northern Virginia tends to fare a little bit better than those other more rural areas in Virginia, but I thought you would be interested to see where they are located. what we refer to as the primary care health profession shortage areas are those where the shortages are the greatest is that darker teal. Where they are less, it is in the lighter green. But what you can see is there isn't a single area in Virginia that is not affected. And there are a very large number, roughly half of the counties in the Commonwealth of Virginia have bona fide federally designated shortages of primary care providers. The picture is similar in terms of dental care. It is also significant in mental health for mental health providers. And what I want you to see on the mental health provider areas is that the areas that are the darkest there are those that have the worst health outcomes and the worst economic conditions and the worst, what we refer to as social determinants of health, than any other county in Virginia. So their high school graduation rates, their employment rates, and their opportunities and their public health and health infrastructure in those dark green areas are less advantaged and in fact worse than they are in the areas that you see in the light green. But it is particularly urgent in those areas with regard to mental health shortages. Ironically, and while we'll be spending a lot of time talking about community-based and more skilled and semi-skilled personnel, it is important to know that there is also a physician shortage emerging. It is particularly acute in the areas of primary care, surgery, and some specialists, especially in the area of psychiatry. Right now, we are short just under 90,000 projected physicians. And this shortage is driven by a number of interesting and challenging things, including just how much time it takes to produce a physician and keep up with whatever the loss or the overall growth is. But it is also being driven by the aging of the physician population. Today, the median age of physicians is actually roughly about 60 years old in most of the high demand fields. And so what is also happening is the demand for physician services in those fields is being driven by the aging of the population and the amount of chronic health conditions that we have. And so the number of physicians is growing because we're seeing them move toward retirements, but also because there is an overall increase in the demand for physicians. And it's going to continue to increase there over the next several years, really through 2023. What can we do about it? Well, part of the other challenge is that we have here, in addition to the aging of the medical workforce and who's choosing to go into medicine versus some other field, and I'm going to come back to that in just a minute. I want you to see what today's physicians are prioritizing in terms of what is important in terms of staying in medicine or practicing medicine. Most of them really care a lot about geographic location. Why? Because it's the quality of life and the conditions for their families. But the most important thing for most physicians is adequate personal time and overall lifestyle, obviously followed by other things such as, family proximity, but even pay. So adequate personal time is a really significant driver for why physicians practice into potentially beyond the age of 65 and why they choose to either not go into medicine or go into medicine or select a particular specialty. And what is unfortunately of a concern is that today's young people are finding personal time even more important. They are not likely to stay in the workforce as long as those in the baby boomer and other generations that have preceded them. So we're going to see the demand for physicians continue to be very, very high because their total time working is also going to be shorter than it has been in past years. This is putting the demand on alternative roles for physicians as well, especially nurse practitioners and nurse midwives, nurse anesthetists, and physician assistants who are able to supplement. They do have in Virginia the ability to diagnose and prescribe if they are nurse practitioners, qualified nurse practitioners, and some psychologists. So those individuals are really very key in helping to ensure the stability of services while we see these physician shortages grow. But it also allows us to make the most of physicians, to have them do those things that others cannot do, and yet delegate those services that that others might be able to pick up. But there is also a growing demand on assistance in the areas related to community health workers, registered nurses in general, and so on. So it is not a good picture. And I will tell you that while the median salary for physicians and surgeons looks good, there is really a wide variation in pay. Highly specialized physicians, quite frankly, earn a lot more, and they are the ones that tend to account for why this salary appears to be so high. Individuals who are practicing physicians and what are the true primary care specialties, general practice, family medicine, and pediatrics, earn significantly less. And in fact, their range of pay is from 90 to the mid 100,000s, not upward. And those are the areas that, as I mentioned, are also have the largest shortage areas. So there is a disconnect now in healthcare providers between pay and demand, especially for unlicensed assistive personnel. And in that regard, I'm talking about home and community-based technicians and personal care aides and certified nursing assistants, as well as medical assistants. What you can see is the projection of the growth that we're going to see up through 2028. And I personally think that what we're going to see in the out years is that our supply is still not going to be able to keep up with this number. So as we readjust this, I figure the out year is going to continue to grow. And I don't think we're likely to see the demand appreciably come down. We're going to continue to see what we call mid-level providers, these alternatives to physicians, grow as well. And note that there is increasing competition for young people when they are selecting their careers, whether they're going to go into health or they're going to go into other areas. In the recent past, individuals have been very interested in the health careers. However, business, technology, and engineering is now garnering the attention of young people, especially young people going into college prepared fields, where their long-term earnings are much higher by double digits than we see in the health field. And the quality of life is viewed as better in terms of the time constraints and the ability to spend time with families. So the issue we have is a sort of a perfect storm. There are factors causing workforce shortages that relate to both what's happening with how we produce our health workforce, but also what is really accounting for that demand. So we're all aging in place, and that's a good thing. But as we do age in place, and as we live longer, we do utilize more services and become more dependent upon support services by other. Our country has made strides in expanding health insurance and other coverage, and that is also increasing the demand for the next several years for the variety of health workers that we see. Healthcare, by the way, is 10% of the total employment in Virginia, and as I mentioned, in those rural areas, is the dominant employer. So what happens in terms of the vitality of the health workforce affects the overall economic vitality of every single area in Virginia, whether it is the dominant healthcare, whether the dominant employer or not. It is that and the quality of schools, the quality of healthcare in schools is the dominant predictor of attracting new businesses and retaining and ensuring a vitality of a distributed, economy and in a wide variety of sectors. Most of our workforce is aging in place, and so they are dropping out of being able to participate in the workforce at a much more rapid rate over the next 10 to 15 years. Nurses may stave off retirement and work past 65. They typically do work well up through 68 and then move toward wind down into part-time positions. But from the age of 70 on, those jobs that require heavy physical labor, as well as long hours, really do work against participation in the workforce, and that works against any of these health careers. There are important barriers to increasing educational capacity and therefore the supply of our workers. In part, only 3% of career and technical education programs that exist in Virginia high schools today. These are the starter preparation areas and where young people begin to learn about the variety of health and health technical and health science careers. They constitute a shockingly small number. This is very concerning, and I'll talk to you in just a bit about what we're trying to do here. If individuals don't know in high school about the opportunities for health, both more those that are related to the soft skills and the semi-technical skills, as well as those that are highly technical, if we don't have the ability to get the attention of individuals and begin to create a pathway that goes into educational careers in high school, we will fall farther and farther behind because of what is happening in the overall demand for workers in all other sectors outside of healthcare. The other problem that we have is we do not have enough qualified teachers and faculty in health-related careers in every single one of these areas, including areas related to the programs that are in high schools. Because of the pay of teachers in high schools, they can't afford to pay say registered nurses who are qualified faculty, for instance, for certified nursing assistant program and others. But that is true. A faculty in nursing or a faculty in health informatics in a college or university makes roughly half of what they will make in the private sector. So there are also challenges with recruiting those who actually are preparing the next generation. Ironically, another area of concern that we also have seen in more recent years is that our high schools and our middle schools are not adequately preparing students in science and math. And in healthcare, one has to be able to add, subtract, multiply, divide, and understand basic science and math. We cannot get around it. And so we are also seeing this being a deterrent to individuals going into health, just as it is going into science, technology, and under other traditional engineering fields. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because for the students that are prepared, the competition for these individuals is heating up and is absolutely huge. But it does tell us that we really do have to worry about and think about what is going on with the adequacy of our, especially high school curricula today, not what it is in general, but what it is able to achieve, because we are falling short and it is not adequate. I can tell you that from personal work experience in a university and what I have observed over my almost 30 years in a university. The other concern we have is that entry-level jobs are increasingly less attractive. First place there is high competition for a shrinking labor pool. So all those individuals that would make great, certified nursing assistants are also being recruited into other sectors. The wages in these areas are also lower compared to other fields. And some of these individuals view themselves as having limited career opportunities because of the types of jobs they have and where they work, and because they may not understand where and how to get started, and where and how they might be able to leverage a starter career, for instance, as a certified nursing assistant, to track into other home and community-based careers and health careers. And in some cases, there is a view of a lack of a prestige. And I'll come back and talk to you about that, and low satisfaction with some of those. If you recall, I mentioned concern about the career and technical education programs. This is a complicated chart, but what I want you to see is the demand for what we call career and technical education. These are individuals who get education in high school and immediately after, but do not require an associate degree or college-based degree to do that work, either in diagnostic services, in information support services in health, in other support services such as care and aids, and in therapeutic services, such as our more technically trained and certified individuals like community health workers, certified nursing assistants, occupational therapy assistants, and so on. Those individuals in that latter group are in that aqua and green shaped bar. Note the demand in Virginia, the total count for them, and how high it is in Virginia, and of course by their geographic areas. On the right side of the slide, however, what you can see is what we are supplying in Virginia coming out of our starter programs. So we are not even spitting distance close to meeting the need for occupational growth, much less the current demand. And this is particularly concerning because this is the area that we could produce workers the fastest, and is the area that has the least problem with actually talking to a prospective pool of applicants. The other thing, the time to produce somebody that's going to work in one of these areas ranges from 3 months to roughly 18 months. And so it is an area where we can and should be able to turn around new entrants to the field much more quickly. The challenge, however, as I mentioned, is that the labor pool is shrinking. And the other thing is that the race and ethnic mix of our population and the changes that are going on there are also changing the notion of where individuals are interested in working and likely to work, and whether they are interested in working in areas that are more what we refer to as science, technology, and math associated. Minority students are simply not selecting health careers proportion to how many we see in our population. And this is a concern because it is critically important that the individuals who are caring for all of us also mirror the population that they're caring for. And because healthcare providers tend to be better accepted by underrepresented groups if they believe they can relate to their healthcare providers. But students are not selecting health careers as often as they did in the past, and that is especially true of male students. Male students today are going to, by a large proportion, be selecting engineering and business and technology field in particular over anything that is health related. But there are also economic conditions that concern us related to retaining older workers, and as well as the fact that there are fewer jobs available in some areas for college graduates that in the past have actually been a feeder source for ongoing health careers. The big issue is that there is high turnover and there are high vacancy rates in home and community-based services as well as in public health. So as those areas have high vacancy rates, the workers that work there feel exhausted and the conditions of work deteriorate. And so it creates a motivation for additional turnover, and we get into a really a true vicious cycle. The education system is also a challenge. The cost of acquiring an education, especially if it's at the associate degree and higher, is continuing to go up. and it's putting pressure on all of us. There is news on that front, though. Virginia is doing some really creative things to help students afford education, including the ability to take courses in high school that are transferable into community college and up through college. There's a lack of educational programs to meet the need, and that is probably our single biggest concern. If we look at the capacity, the physical limitations of programs in terms of the size of their classrooms, the size of their technical labs, the size of where they can place students for practicum and internship and clinical training sites, they are simply maxed out, and we need more. The area that is the most problematic for most health professional programs, however, is the scarcity of clinical training sites. You know, if you need to train a nurse in pediatrics, you got to go to pediatrics. If you need, you know, obstetrical care or psychiatric care, they need to be able to have an opportunity to actually learn how to take care of individuals literally by doing care. And so it's putting a lot of pressure on all of us in higher education to use a number of technical innovations, artificial labs, artificial intelligence, robots, and simulations to actually prepare them better so that we can make the most of our hands-on training sites. But I can tell you from personal experience, there is nothing that replaces the human-to-human care experience and the learning that has to go on to diagnose, treat, and relate to others. There are increasing credentialing requirements that we are seeing in many fields. Pharmacists now require a doctoral degree. They did not require a doctoral degree, for instance, 20 years ago. So we see requirements to be deemed competent and to meet the minimum requirements for licensure in most health areas increasing on a continuing basis. There are also problems related to scope of practice laws that sometimes restrict the use of paraprofessionals and the delivery of health services. So we are continuing to try and do work in this area. Virginia has been in more recent years very aggressive about expanding scope of practice opportunities for nurses, physician assistants, pharmacists, and psychologists to meet shortage demands. And then there are technical training that is needed to satisfy the demand for highly skilled workers. Today's certified nursing assistants need a different kind of training than they used to get 20 years ago. And it's very important that we have programs that have the ability to train them on not only the equipment, but also to understand the needs of the populations that they are taking care of, including in minority populations. And it's important that we have role models. The other thing, and we're getting close to the end here, it's important to understand that there is something referred to as the feminization of the entire health workforce. Remember, I said that male young people are not likely to go into health in the same rates at which they used to. Women represent in medical schools today the more than half of the entrants going into medical schools today, and therefore going into medical residencies and specialty programs in the very near future, are female. While in the past we've been used to seeing nurses be traditionally female, roughly 11% of nurses are male, but it is females that are primarily the prospective applicants to our health workforce, and that is true at all levels, including the 12 major health professions. And this increase in the proportion of women over men is really quite significant than even 10 years ago. But there are also expanded career choices for women and a heavy effort to recruit more women into those science and technology fields, especially in engineering, where their starting salaries are always going to be in the 6-digit numbers. Males enter traditionally female professions at a much lower rate, and now we're going to be seeing that with physicians as well. And by the way, the median age of males is higher than that of females in the same professions for over half of the licensed health professionals. So what that tells us is those men that are coming into health-related careers have largely had other careers first and then go into healthcare. So while there's real advantages of having a more mature individual who has good life experience, we love to get them. They will spend, though, less time in aggregate in the field because they're starting their careers much later. So where's some of the solutions? What the heck can we do about it? Because we need to not just wring our hands. We must take aggressive action. We are working quite aggressively. Some of our private sector partners, the Claude Moore Foundation in particular, is trying to stimulate the growth of the certificate and technical education training programs in high schools and supporting recruitment. They are also supporting regional planning and upskilling for early entry individuals to go into the health and health science careers. And this is showing considerable promise throughout what are referred to as regional planning consortia throughout Virginia. What we are doing when we are standing up these regional partnerships is we create a partnership with businesses, with schools, with healthcare providers, home and community-based providers, to come together to understand where their workforce needs are the greatest, to identify what all those individuals might do to help both with recruitment, with invigorating the educational system, but also supporting individuals in the form of scholarships, traineeships, and practicum placements, as well as faculty that is helping to actually expand some of these bottleneck areas. So we are very optimistic about what's going to go on. We have also been looking for ways to expand what are called articulation programs, or to make connections between these starter degrees that are considered not considered, quote, professional or college-based degrees, to track them into the health careers. And so this just gives you an example of a pathway that we are working on across Virginia that has been adopted with a number of areas. It is in place here in Northern Virginia, in Loudoun County, and in Prince William County, where we are looking to articulate the work that students do in these starter programs, give them advanced placement, or at least credit for what they are learning as they work through other careers and so on. And I will tell you, George Mason University in particular has a program referred to as Mason Advance, where any student that goes into the advanced program at Northern Virginia Community College has automatic acceptance to George Mason University bachelor's degree programs in affiliated and key areas. So they do their what we refer to as general education, original work in the community college, and then they transfer to George Mason University and complete their degrees. And we have articulations in nursing, in health administration, in health informatics, in the medical technology areas, in social work, and in psychology. So this is very important in terms of trying to open up the pipeline. But we are also looking to see greater mobility between different education levels on up through graduate and postgraduate, at least in the direct healthcare provider areas. It is more difficult for physicians because of the length of time, but there is work trying to recruit other mid-level providers, such as nurse practitioners and PAs, to expedite what might be pathways into medicine where that is appropriate. But as I told you, the picture does not look entirely rosy, even though we are working hard on these areas. So another area that is critically important, and many of us are doing work on today, is looking at ways that technology may help increase the productivity of our workforce, or actually replace the need for the number of some individuals, or at least reduce the number of individuals by helping to make those that we have work much smarter. I can tell you today in hospitals, we have pioneered, tested, and are using robotic, robots that actually have a human-like face, that are actually used as sitters for individuals who are likely to become disoriented, and for whom we need to have literally eyes on individuals to assure their safety. We're also seeing telemedicine and tele-ICU and monitoring and even home monitoring be able to be used today. And that is helping individuals take some of their health matters into their own hands, but also helps them communicate with their physicians and their healthcare providers so that they don't have to necessarily go into the doctor's office. You can actually send a picture of your EKG to your physician, a picture of your blood oxygen level or your blood sugar to your healthcare provider from a home setting. So there are many things that can be done. We are also looking at ways to give new tools to all levels of individuals, as I said, to make them work more capably within their various areas. And if you have particular questions about this, it really depends on what kind of field we're talking about. I would certainly be happy to answer any questions about that. However, here we are at the end. I know I've covered a lot with you. Please do not hesitate to give me a yell if I can be of assistance, and I'd be very happy to take any questions that anyone has. I hope your silence isn't that I've put you to sleep.
Dr. Maddox, this is, we're interested in what you think we can do as an association and then as individuals to support many of these initiatives that come out of the federal government, Department of Education, local school boards, so on and so forth. Is there any kind of alert that comes out from your university, for example, on what's coming up in terms of change initiatives?
So I would say, for starters, it is very important. The state funding for health education programs and health careers is absolutely critical. So I would say one of the things that your organization can do is write your state senator and your state delegates and let them know that you are concerned about assuring adequate funding for health careers across the board, but that includes your interest and concern around funding for high schools for CTE programs, as well as those programs that are working on creating what I'm going to call career ladders or opportunities for mobility for educating health professions in the future. So there is direct work that could be done to better fund schools of nursing programs, the CTE programs, especially for these tech careers and certified nursing assistants, as well as licensed practical nurses. More needs to be done in these areas. And as I said, the payoff is really quite quick if we can actually expand the capacity in these areas. I would also tell you the thing that you can do is write your Congress person. And of course, it could either be Jennifer Wexton in this area or Jerry Conley, generally speaking, in most of our Northern Virginia area, or Senator Kane around your concerns around health workforce adequacy and around the role that the federal government might play with regard to scholarships and expanded traineeship programs. So the federal government itself is limited. The federal government doesn't do education, but they have areas where they provide both scholarships and where they stimulate funding and provide grants and contracts to programs throughout the United States for expanding their programs. And Mason is one of them. We are not the only one, but just letting them know that you are concerned and the opportunity that you are hoping that they are taking every opportunity they can to support supplemental funding to universities that have health profession training programs and technical training programs, including into the high school. So initially, just a general starter letter is terrific. And I would say for those of you that even have your constituents, wow, I was telling you, the individuals that I met at Westminster were highly engaged and very articulate. And I'm telling you, if they got on a letter writing campaign, those congressional offices would have their heads spinning. So I would say where you have an opportunity to encourage the individuals that are residents in facilities that you represent, they're very, the electorate is very powerful. And so having them weigh in as individuals is also very, very influential. And I would say, as there are opportunities with new legislation, if you all want to just send me your contact information, you bet. I will let you know what may be pending. I will tell you, we have a new governor, of course, because Virginia has to, we're not permitted to have a consecutive governorship, but we have a new governor and a change in, of course, that individual's party. So they're just still sorting out, even as we speak, they're in legislative session, working on a reconciliation budget. So I would say, besides your state senator and delegate, writing the governor to let him know that you are concerned about efforts to grow and expand the Virginia health workforce. I will also include for you, and I'm sorry that I didn't on my contact information, but I'll send it out to Claudia again. I'll send my cell phone number to you, and I will also send you, Mason has just stood up. It is only 3 months old. We have a Virginia Health Workforce Center that is specifically working to grow the Virginia health workforce. Now, that means that we are both studying and providing data on what's happening so that we have ready data to know where we should be spending our resources and what's happening when we do. It's not enough to just give money. We want to know that something's going to happen, right? So I will provide a link to the Workforce Center. In the coming months, as we expand the funding of the center, we will be having information that relates to policy opportunities and what's happening in Virginia. Right now, it primarily will give you information, detailed information on what's happening with supply, demand, and economic development. But it will have increasingly larger amounts of information that will likely be of interest to you in coming years. The other thing I would say to you, what can you do? And I'm sorry, this is going to be old hat to the colleagues that were at Westminster. Of the workforce that you have, you absolutely need to focus on how you take better care of them. And, a kind word, an incentive and recognition program, individuals that actually honestly just stop and say thank you is something that happens really infrequently. And I will tell you, we have done focus groups and market research with nursing assistants employed in a number of home and community-based efforts. But those that work with the aging population, both in nursing homes, assisted living facilities, and whatnot, really largely don't feel appreciated. They feel that they are not recognized for helping to make the quality of life better of the individuals that they support and serve in those areas, and they are often treated with disrespect and rudeness. And they work long hours and often get called back into work and so on. So many of them are telling us that they feel really committed, and they often get personally very attached to key individuals that they take care of, but they as a rule, as a group, they don't feel that their institutions, their employers, and the larger group of individuals that they care for think that they're an important part of the mission and the equation. So I will tell you, redoubling your efforts to recognize and provide opportunities to just thank, if not appreciate them, goes a really long way. And you would be very surprised how much that really means to individuals especially if they are working multiple jobs and they are working multiple hours. You will stand apart from others. And I will tell you the loyalty of these individuals, especially given that they tend to be in from different cultures and often races than individuals who have been born and grown up in the United States. Many of them have a strong call to service and a commitment to and respect for elders. And so these efforts especially resonate with those individuals. So anyway, that's some of the things that you certainly can do. And for those that are interested in participating with innovation programs like robotics, like GPS tracking systems for safety and music therapy programs, or any of those other things, if you're interested in anything along those lines, if you want to just send me an email, I'll connect you to at least my colleagues at George Mason that might be doing some work in this area, or at least we'll put you on a list so that where we're looking for partners when we're doing research and development, proof of concept, or those other kinds of things, we'll know who we can reach out to.
I'm curious about what has been done for the getting healthy elders in the work, as you've looked at trying to get people in the workforce. I mean, they of course left the workforce, but
Right.
Some of them are living so long.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe they get tired of playing golf and maybe get tired of traveling, that they could, is there something that could be done to encourage more of them to be involved in care?
So I can tell you that if we look at both the hospital sector in particular, they have a wide variety of jobs available, both full and part-time. And some of those jobs require less physical active work. Sometimes that becomes, as I said, a nurse who's age 70 or 75 tells us typically that they don't have the energy or the physical strength to do bedside care like they used to, but they would be outstanding instructors for certified nursing assistant programs. So I would say those individuals ought to be looking for jobs in the school system, and there are online job opportunities that are posted in Indeed and other areas, but all of the traditional health sector employers and the school systems do have on web-based applications and job announcements. And I would encourage them to apply, because I'll tell you, everybody's looking for somebody who has experience and is talented. And there are many other jobs that you'll see that might be, for instance, working a registration desk or those other things that may not be, it might be absolutely of interest to someone. And maybe I worked as a nurse before, but maybe I'd be really interested in doing working in the Welcome Center, or working in registration, or working in utilization review or whatnot. So I would say it is a matter of individuals looking. Is there a central recruitment location? No, but again, if you've got an individual who's particularly interested, you can certainly give them my email, and I would be very happy to correspond with them and give them an idea of either where to look or who to send them to for further consideration. But the other thing is, I think you're seeing that many hospitals in particular, it depends on the system, but the HCA system hospital, Centara, and Inova, which are the largest in the Commonwealth of Virginia, actually do have programs in place to retain individuals longer, which is why they are going to larger numbers of part-time employees, and even what is referred to as occasional workers. They bring them back on what we call working when you feel like it, calling up and saying, gee, I have 2 hours next week, what do you have? So there are what are called PRN pools and those things that are available in some categories of employees.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I want to say that at Westminster of Lake Ridge, one thing we have is a fund that allows our employees to apply for scholarships. Once a month, they show the employees that have qualified for these scholarships out of this fund. Sometimes it has become a US citizen, which of course is very valuable, but sometimes it's to take a higher level course in healthcare.
Right.
And if that fund was started by some residents, but I'm always delighted to see how many people do apply to get scholarships from that fund.
You know, I'm so glad you made that comment, because what we find when we talk to this group of these individuals, they care a lot. They care about getting smarter, learning more. They are, contrary to what people may think, they are highly motivated, generally speaking. And so it's a great opportunity, not for everybody, of course, but for many, it is a tremendous opportunity, especially if they have good English language skills. And I would tell you, that's another area that y'all can help with, where you have individuals with limited English, things that you can do to help their English literacy goes a long way toward getting them prepared for larger numbers of opportunities as well.
Also, even just tonight, they're having an employee appreciation dinner.
Mhm.
And that the staff is, not the residents, but the staff is. And I think that goes a long way to show that the employees, that they are recognized, that they are appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely. I would
Yeah.
say if you're in an institution and if you're not doing some of those things, I about guarantee that your turnover is higher than average.
And I want to thank you so much, Dr. Maddox. You have given us a great deal to consider, and I will be following up with an invitation. And if your schedule permits, perhaps have you talk to our strategic planning committee here at Covenant Woods. We are looking at rebranding Covenant Woods, and with special attention to, Manor East, our healthcare, memory unit, assisted living, and the entire workforce is one of the key figures in that effort. So I'll follow up with an email to you. And if anyone else has questions for Dr. Maddox, please contact her directly, or if you've lost her email, ask Claudia or myself or Sarah, for her email. Thank
I'm
you.
gonna provide my phone number on a revised set of the slides. I'll send it to Claudia and she can send it out. I'm also going to put the link to the Mason Health Workforce Center there as well.
Thank
All
you.
right.
I'll
Thank
be
you.
sending out a link to the video and your slides as well.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Claudia, for your help with this, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have a content-rich program for you today, and I'm very happy to have Sarah, our Legislative Vice President, present Colleen Grady. And Sarah has worked for 3 years on our legislative prospects to improve the lives of CCRC residents. And she's going to introduce Colleen, and Colleen will produce a set of slides on her experiences in the General Assembly, and we'll touch base on some of the other senior bills that have impact on CCRC residents. Sarah?
Okay. For a year and a half, Colleen Grady has been invaluable to VaCCRA. As Delegate Willett's legislative aide and campaign strategist, Colleen guided VaCCRA's 2022 bill through a maze of state agencies while providing VaCCRA's leaders outstanding advice. Of all the legislative aides with whom I have worked, Colleen is the most knowledgeable, efficient, and hardworking. Colleen is a native of Alexandria, Virginia, and a graduate of William and Mary College. Before beginning her work with Delegate Willett, she worked as the Deputy Finance Director for a congressional campaign in Texas and as a Finance Director in a successful Virginia Senate campaign, raising $3 million, the highest amount in the 2019 election cycle. Colleen's comprehensive slides will be posted on VaCCRA's website later. Colleen, we are delighted you were able to join us today.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I don't think I could ask for a better introduction than that. It's great to see a lot of familiar faces and also some new ones. I believe I should have the authority to share my screen now, so I'll get right into it. All right. All right. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I am going to give a little update just on what's been going on in terms of the General Assembly. I know Dr. Maddox mentioned that our budget is still a little up in the air. I'll talk about the legislation that we worked on, as well as some other legislation that I think is relevant to the lives of some senior Virginians. And then I have a section that's kind of focused on how to navigate the legislative process online, how to access all this information. I think I heard when working a lot with members that it can be difficult to find a specific bill. So hopefully that all has, will provide some clarity, and you'll have a copy of the slides moving forwards. Okay, so I'll get into kind of the latest news. So the 2022 regular session met from January to March 12th. However, we didn't really finish up all of our work there. We were unable to reach a compromise between the House and Senate on the budget, as well as a few outstanding pieces of legislation. So we rolled those all into what's called a special session, but then adjourned all of our other bills. And when the General Assembly adjourns, all the legislation that was passed to the governor, he has the opportunity to consider it. He can make, a veto of the legislation. He can make recommendations that would change it. He can strike out certain provisions, and then it's sent back to the General Assembly for consideration. So legislators met yesterday to consider the governor's vetoes. All of the legislation that was vetoed was sustained, and most of his recommendations were adopted. A lot of the recommendations, some were more contentious. Some were just kind of simple and clarifying, and in that way, the governor's office kind of serves as a third check on our legislative process. But we are also still in the middle of a special session that is primarily focused on the budget, as well as a new gas tax proposal from the governor. Now, I cannot tell you, and I don't even know myself, what's going to be in the final budget. It has to be done by June 30th. We're already a little late, so we're trying to help move things along. But both the House and Senate versions of the budget would include money for a teacher pay raise. The House is at 4% in 2022 and 2023. The Senate is at 5% each year. Both of them will have a one-time tax rebate to Virginians, slightly different amount. House has $250 per person, Senate has $600, and both would eliminate the state grocery tax. Our groceries are taxed at partially a state level, partially a local level. The Senate provision of the budget takes away the state tax, which is a little easier for us to do because there is a concern of not wanting to mess up localities' revenues, I think, especially after kind of a tumultuous couple of years with COVID. The House budget would take away both provisions. So legislators are really working out some of the details and kind of policy implications now. And in terms of, I feel like a lot of people have probably been hearing about gas prices, the gas tax. The governor does have a new proposal that would cut the 26-cent per gallon tax on gas from May to July, and then phase it back in through the summer. Now, gas is taxed at the wholesale level. So for savings to be fully passed on to consumers, it would require businesses to pass those along and not just keep prices high. So lawmakers in the special session are still kind of working out some of those policy implications. If anyone has questions, more specifically on any of the things I just mentioned, feel free to reach out. Excuse me. I'll kind of take a step back now and jump into the legislation that we worked on. Essentially, we had been meeting our office had been meeting with members of VaCCRA for a while, talking about some of the past work that they had done, and ultimately came to a bill that would have established an online and telephone complaint line for residents to alert the SEC of potential violations of the facilities. It would require resident representation on the board and provide residents the right to post information regarding residents' rights without any retaliatory conduct. And it would require CCRCs and CVCCs to make some improvements to their disclosure statements. Now, ultimately, the bill did not pass, but we had really wonderful testimony from Penny, Jez, and Sarah, representatives from Leading Age, as well as some of the facilities that I know you all knew spoke out against the bill. Their main concern was with board representation and kind of a, I think what they viewed as a one-size-fits-all solution to, individual problems at individual facilities. I can't really speak in terms of, the thought process behind the legislators when they were voting. But those were some of the kind of main arguments that were brought up. The subcommittee did vote to, we presented it in House Subcommittee on Commerce and Energy, and they voted to lay the bill on the table, which means 6 members voted against the bill, 2 voted in support, and it would not advance to the full committee to continue on that session. And again, I'll be sharing these resources with you all, and there's a full transcript of the bill hearing that I've written out for you online here. And hopefully my resources later on can help you find the video if you're interested. Now, despite not getting a legislative victory, I've been really pleased with the work that we have done with VaCCRA as well as the SEC to make some of the improvements that our legislation suggested without necessarily having to put things into law. I think when I met with the SEC and when representatives of Leading Age met with the SEC, they definitely agreed that their website could be improved and be more consumer friendly and help seniors navigate kind of the complex process that is finding, care for, your later years. So we met recently with representatives of the SEC, VaCCRA, and Leading Age to discuss improvements to the website and developing a better regulatory guide for CCRCs, one that's more consumer friendly and then one that's more business oriented for the folks who are running these facilities. So I'm excited about that. We're going to give the SEC a little time to work on it and implement some of these changes and check back in with them at the end of May or mid-May, see how things are going, and then have another meeting to kind of see where things end up. So I think we've made some good progress there. Excuse me, I'm sorry. I think some of my slides got jumped around. Okay, I'm jumping into a few other bills that may have interest to you all or some of your friends, colleagues, whatever it is. I know you all live independently, but there was legislation coming up this past session, and if you follow the General Assembly, you've probably seen it before, to establish nursing home staffing standards of you must have this number of nurses per this many residents completing this number of hours of work. And it's, an issue that's been introduced to the General Assembly before. I think COVID really highlighted and exacerbated the issue of the real danger when facilities are understaffed, especially in a public health emergency. Ultimately, 2 different bills were introduced. Both were failed to report. A lot of the conversation around it was some of the workforce issues that Dr. Maddox mentioned and how a lot of the facilities want to be hiring, but the workforce just isn't there. But the chairman did agree to hold 3 meetings on the topic. We held our first one yesterday, which I thought was really productive and helped educate a lot of committee members. So I don't think this is going away, and maybe something to look into if you're interested. I know we got a lot of outreach from constituents in our district about this bill. This goes over kind of arguments in favor. Another argument is Virginia just started a program called value-based purchasing, which instead of setting a hard line of you have to meet these staffing standards or else, kind of the stick approach, we also have kind of a carrot approach in the works called value-based purchasing, where facilities receive higher reimbursement rates when they are staffed at adequate levels. So that was one of the arguments of waiting on the firm standards and trying to see if that value-based purchasing model would produce the results we're looking for. Okay, this next slide's a lot of text. I promise I won't read it all. I feel like there was a lot of conversation this past year, 2 years regarding adult guardianship and conservatorship systems. I think it's definitely been in the public. And also, you know, in 2021, JLARC, which is the Joint Legislative Audit Review Committee, it's sort of like the investigator for the General Assembly. They conducted a study of it and found that there was a lot of problems in our current system, both within the private and the public system. Private guardians were not required to regularly visit with the adults they serve. Guardians have had a little too much authority, the report found, to restrict the individual in the conservatorship from visiting with friends and family. And they found that some judges lacked the adequate information when deciding to appoint a conservator or a guardian in the first place, which is pretty serious considering it's could be a permanent decision. So there was a number of pieces of legislation to improve the system, established public guardianship and conservator ombudsman office, directs the Department of Aging and Rehabilitation Services to convene a work group to talk about potentially having a requirement that you have to visit at least once every 90 days, and just improves the court processes, I think, and will help prevent abuse and neglect of some of our vulnerable adults. And the last one is a bill I really like because it was definitely kind of relevant when I was doing work into the bill that we had for CCRCs. So a lot of you probably know CCRCs are combinations, a little bit of nursing homes, assisted living facilities, and independent living facilities. In Virginia, the Department of Health regulates nursing homes. Department of Social Services regulates assisted living facilities. And then our state corporation commission regulates independent living facilities. So there's a lot of different people at the table. There's a lot of different agencies looking over. Yes, there are different, there's distinctions between these levels of care, but there's a lot of similarities in terms of the population they're serving. And I think as CCRCs kind of show, this is a range of care services that someone might use over their lifetime. So we passed a bill to study, to request that the Secretary of Health study the current oversight and regulation of nursing homes and see if we can combine it into a unitary agency, which I think will improve just the overall structure and administration of regulation and services. Okay, does anyone have any questions about the 2022 legislative session, any bills, before I kind of jump into a little more on how to navigate the General Assembly website and how to read a bill? Okay, that's fine. We'll have more time for questions at the end. So wanted to start off with some useful terminology that you may hear a lot. And again, you'll have these as a resource, but these, a lot of times in the General Assembly, we use our own words and it can be really confusing for people who are following along to understand what we're talking about. So the first one is sine die, which is a Latin term. It means without day. And when we adjourn sine die, it is the last day of the legislative session. So it essentially means a full adjournment, all of our work is over, and we are done. Move the pending question is another one. So we have different legislative rules in the General Assembly versus what they have in the federal legislature. They're called Jefferson's rules. And one of the rules kind of prevents a filibuster, or the ability for people to just kind of keep talking and keep debating about a bill for hours and hours and hours and never get the vote. So if the debate is going on for a while, a delegate can move the pending question and it asks for a vote on the bill, and is kind of a call to say, let's stop talking about it, let's take a vote, which is kind of unique compared to our federal process. Lay on the table, I went over this a little earlier, it's kind of a nice way of killing a bill. The committee chair can bring back up the bill with the majority vote, but it really never happens. We've got such a short legislature and are really moving through things pretty quickly. But lay on the table, sometimes you'll hear folks say, you know, I move to gently lay on this bill on the table. I always joke that that's even a nicer way. Pass by indefinitely, that is a mean way of killing a bill. Pass by indefinitely mean it cannot be brought up, and people will generally do it when they do not like a bill, they want to stop conversation, move on, and let the patron know that they didn't like the bill. And then carryover. So one thing that will happen in some bills is that they may not vote yes or no on it, but they'll take a vote to carry it over into the next year. So we do that in even yeared sessions to say, okay, you know, this could be a good bill, but we need more time. Maybe you need more time. We're going to vote to carry it over to the 2023 session. The bill is dead for the year, but can then be reintroduced, and happens a lot, I think, sometimes on bigger projects when people maybe need a little more time to think through the full policy. Okay, I also had helpful, excuse me. Okay. I'm so sorry. I'm embarrassed to probably be the youngest person on this call and have the most issues with my tech. But how to track legislation online. So everything is posted on the Legislative Information System, which is LIS. The links are here, as well as links to see upcoming committee meetings. This is what the homepage looks like. To see a list of all the General Assembly members, I find that really helpful. You can just click that second button. Standing committees, standing committees are all of our committees that meet routinely throughout the session. So House Health, Senate Health, Education, Finance, Appropriations. If you want to see what is going on within a particular subject area policy, I think standing committees is a really great place to start. Okay. Oh, it just went away. Now, if you notice on the homepage, it says 2022 session right at the top. So all of the links under it are going to be just about bills in the 2022 session. To see other sessions, you just come over here and you can drop down, and it has information from probably 30 years back on the history of every single bill, and it's just a really good resource. Okay. Okay. How to read a bill. So when you find your legislation you're looking for, it can be sometimes difficult when you open it up, see different font changes and not really understand what the bill would do or what changes it would make. So any language that is in a regular type font is in language that is already existing in our code. If an existing section of code is deleted, then it's stricken out with a line going through it. And then when you're adding new language or adding a code section, everything will be in italics. And code sections are broken up by titles, which are, major areas of law. 54.1 profession, occupation is a big one. And then chapters, so chapter 27, for example, section. And that's how you kind of segment and can read and cite a code. So I have kind of an example of a bill here. I chose something I thought was pretty simple, but this bill would have required health insurers to cover services provided by athletic trainers when they have a referral. So to look at what the bill, to find the bill, you would click on this link to see the bill, how it was introduced. And then this link at the bottom, text has passed the House and Senate. Could be a different version if there were committee amendments. And then impact statement to the right is going to tell you if there was any potential cost associated with the bill, and that's really important. So this is an example of the bill that was introduced. So everything in normal type font was already in the code. Everything that's italicized would be added in, and I underlined just so that you could see that. So that's kind of how to decipher what each of the bills kind of do when you're looking at them. So this is an example also of a citing of the Virginia Code. I have a link to the Virginia Code website. And one thing that's really helpful is under each chapter, there are these little numbers in blue. When you click on them, they'll link you to legislation that altered that code. So if you're looking at something and want to see how the law was 20 years ago, why is it different now, and what bill got it there, you have that resource available. So when I click on the 505 and the 587, I'm brought to the LIS bill pages for these two above bills. And I can see how they changed the code section that I had. Okay, and this is kind of went over this bill history. This is one of our bills. Bill history is listed out underneath. This one is short because it died pretty quickly, but a bill needs to be referred to a committee, assigned to a subcommittee, voted on, and it's how you get all your information on where a bill is in the legislative process. And does anyone have any questions about how to use these resources or the legislative process in general, or?
I have one. At what point do we as citizens have the most impact on a bill? Where should we enter the process?
I think that's a good question. If it's a bill that's already been introduced and you want to weigh in on it, the number one thing you should do is contact your representatives, because I know our offices and other offices operate similarly. Anytime a constituent at the 73rd district emails, they get a response and their position on a bill is logged for the delegate, so he has that information before he votes. Now, if 50 people emails in support and 30 email against, that doesn't mean he's necessarily going to vote with those numbers, but it's important for him to have that information. So your member is always most important. I would say also at the earlier process of the bill in its original house, I would say you have more authority to maybe advocate once the bill passes its house of origin and goes to the other side. People can be more hesitant to maybe make changes because it's already passed one way, and it just already has a lot of momentum. Now, another good thing to do is reach out to the members of the committee that the bill will be heard on. That's really important, kind of like the day or two before the bill hearing comes up, because it lets people know, like, okay, there's going to be some conversation on this bill. People have insight. to share. So email your representatives, email members of the committee. And my recommendations for writing our emails are keep it short, keep it, introduce yourself with your name and your address, and try to list like 2 or 3 reasons that summarize your policy position, because we get so many emails and it can be kind of daunting to have to read through a 6-paragraph email to kind of get your policy position, where if it's short and sweet, I see it, you're a constituent, it's been logged, and I think you can feel confident that you've been heard.
So does that mean that if I'm looking at a bill and it's in a committee and I want to contact the committee person or someone on the committee, but my delegate or senator is not on that committee, does it mean that that I'm not going to be read even?
No, I think specifically, like when I prep Delegate Willett for a committee, if I receive a lot of emails about it, I'll make notes for him on it and make sure people are known. That is kind of one of the negatives about the process. It's just that there are so many people emailing about so many different issues. We have a part-time legislature with only 1 staff member. So we have to prioritize constituents. That being said, I would still send the email because, likely there's a staffer who's gonna click through it, see that you're not a constituent, but maybe take some of your talking points and share them with his boss or her boss.
Thank you.
Of course.
Any more questions for Colleen? Thank you, Colleen. I'm sure we're going to be calling back on you next General Assembly session, maybe in January, and we'll see if we can track some of these other bills in a better fashion than we have before. Thank you so much.
Of course, I'm always happy to help, and thank you guys so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to turn the meeting over to Sarah Coleman, and anybody who wishes to depart now after our 2 really good content-rich programs, feel free to. We're going to move into the business meeting section of the VaCCRA meeting, and we promise to be efficient in our time usage. Sarah, go ahead, unmute yourself though.
All right, my report is rather short. I have 3 topics to share with you. First, I want to acknowledge the important and very appreciated contributions that Jim Trometer and Julia Sales made to our legislative committee. Dr. Trometer, a retired professor of experimental psychology, obtained Delegate Willett for sponsorship of our bill. Jim also proposed many excellent suggestions for increasing VaCCRA's membership and disseminating VaCCRA's accomplishments. Recently, Jim resigned from the legislative committee in order to have more personal and travel time. Julia Sales was an attorney who worked with the federal and DC governments primarily in the fields of civil rights. She gave us advice about how to write and shepherd bills through the legislatures. Sadly, Julia died in late March and is greatly missed by her many friends at Goodwin House. Second, although Colleen mentioned our recent process, I want to elaborate that on April 12th, Penny, Susan, and myself met with 5 members of the State Corporation Commission Bureau of Insurance, that's the SCC, and 2 leading age representatives to discuss the need to make more accessible and relevant the SCC's guide to their regulation of CCRCs and their webpage. Penny gave the SCC a list of 17 potential revisions for the guide and a list of 9 website improvements that VaCCRA thinks are necessary. I provided a 2-page list of examples of CCRC concerns and problems. While the meeting was very cordial and productive, we stated we want a seat at the table. because in the future, we want to represent ourselves. Therefore, as Colleen has mentioned, we anticipate another meeting in the upcoming month or two to review SCC's revision and work. I want to thank Colleen for orchestrating this meeting, because finally we have been allowed a direct conversation with the SCC, the agency that currently regulates our CCRCs. And I want to add that I'm delighted you all got to see Colleen and meet her. She's really an amazing young lady and been an enormous help to us. Lastly, third and lastly, VaCCRA needs to hear from its members about their concerns and what they want from VaCCRA. If members don't speak out, then only 4 or 5 VaCCRA leaders set the policy and the goals for the organization. Recently, I read 70% of the world's population lives under dictatorships and autocracies, and only 17 live in true democracies. This statistic horrified me, and it strengthens my desire to work in organizations and on committees in which all members are included and are heard. So again, I urge you to contact VaCCRA leadership to share your opinions and your ideas for this important organization. To date, I have heard from 9 of you, but I hope to hear from many more. That's my report for this meeting.
Thank you, Sarah. The next item on the agenda is already resolved. I received an email from Barbara McNamee, our VP for Communications, who has offered to chair the nominating committee for VaCCRA elections. We hold elections in October at our annual membership meeting, and that topic is going to be resident representation on boards of directors, with those who serve on boards as residents appearing in a panel. Barbara will be managing the nominations from self-nominating as well as from the membership at large for a few of our openings. We use alternate years for elections. So this year, I believe the president is up for re-election, or a new person, and the secretary and senior VP as one-year appointment. So those will be the 3. If I'm mistaken, Susan, chime in, but we'll be putting out a call for nominations with this next email. All right. Susan, you want to go ahead to the quick revision of the bylaws, please?
Sure. We recently revised the bylaws. This is an effort that started in December of 2019, where the officers got together, and Penny very kindly hosted that meeting. We looked at all of the documents that govern how we do business, the bylaws, the position descriptions, and the policy and procedures manual. Because of COVID and the inability to meet, we pretty much tabled everything that happened at that meeting and are now picking it back up. We have 5 pages of bylaws that have been revised. We'll be sending that out so that we can vote on it officially at the October meeting. The kinds of changes that are in this are primarily things to help account for and consider the electronic meetings. We had only had 1 or 2 meetings before 2019 on Zoom. We've been doing almost all of our business on Zoom since then, and we wanted to ensure that that was encoded or sanctioned by our bylaws. In other instances, we've simply upgraded some of the language. There are no significant modifications to it. And we will be circulating it and voting on it at the October meeting. The bylaws is the only document that the membership votes on and approves, and that means a membership meeting. And the next one will be the one in October. We're going to look at the other documents as they come up. I'm looking at the policy and, the job descriptions right now, and that will be the next one that we'll bring before the board can approve that one. And so it will probably come up at the next board meeting. We're doing things, again, making sure the video formats are acceptable. We no longer have an administrative assistant. The jobs that were under the administrative assistant have to be distributed to other officers as appropriate. Some changes in wording, things like that. We will get that out as soon as it's finished and at least to the board. And that so that we can look at it and finalize it at the next board meeting. The final document would be the policies and procedures manual. I haven't even looked at that one yet. So if there's questions, please ask.
I just want to add that I believe that everyone's been sent a link to the document, the bylaws with the changes.
Okay.
It is
Good.
also available on the website on the homepage at VaCCRA.org.
Okay. That's terrific. If there are comments on that document, send them to myself or to Claudia so that we can consider them.
Right. Thank you, Susan.
Welcome.
Is Martha Cole Glenn here?
Yes.
If not, I'll read her membership report. She's our new vice president for membership, and she submitted a very short report, but it's a extremely encouraging report. We have 17 communities in the state with VaCCRA members. The membership ranges.
She's here, Penny.
Here, okay, yippee.
I think so.
Well, somebody just put up a set of webs.
Yeah, I did, because I was going to do that as she spoke.
Here,
So,
all right, that's enough.
Martha Cole, will you unmute yourself and be ready to go?
Yeah, her phone number came up online and not her face. Okay.
Oh.
Okay, got me. Okay,
Got it.
can you hear me? Okay,
Yes.
good morning. Hi, I have a very short membership report with a reminder that we're only as strong as our total membership. Today, we have 17 communities with VaCCRA members. The membership ranges from 1 to 145.
Yep, I've lost it.
This is the wrong slide.
Yep, I'm sorry. I've got I had it. Keep going.
Okay, for a total of 525 members. We had 375 members a year ago. Most communities have a very small membership. We have work to do because there are 50 communities in the Commonwealth of Virginia. In order to be more effective, we need to increase our membership. I'm saying it over and over again. I'm proud to say that here at Cedarfield, we've increased our membership from 7 in October of 2021 to a total of 111.
Ooh.
Over the course of the summer, I will be happy to talk with you about what can be effective in your own individual communities and look for a report on how we increased our membership at Cedarfield in the next VaCCRA news.
Great. Thank you so much, Martha.
Sorry. So obviously Colleen is not the only one who had trouble managing her PowerPoint.
That's all right.
We have a lot of content. I didn't realize you had the bylaws there, but as well. So let's go ahead to your report, a financial report by Claudia Blake, our esteemed treasurer and webmaster and Zoom master.
This is the budget that the board has passed, which is based on our fairly minimal expenses and no increase in dues for this year. The net effect is that we're projecting a deficit of about $5,000, $5,500. So it is my plan. I did propose a dues increase, which was rejected by the board for this year. But the concept has been embraced for the following year. So you can expect to hear more on that. The financial report is gives us, this is a sense of where we are. We're currently at a deficit of $187.57. Our expenses have been just the newsletter and our monthly fee for books online. And we paid our VaCCRA dues. And here's our balance sheet. We still have $41,552 in the bank, so we can afford to carry our deficit. But as I say, we can't do that in the long run, nor should we want to. So, are there any questions?
Thank you, Claudia. Can you go back to the spring meeting agenda sheet?
Oh, I took that down. Sorry. I'll bring it back when I found it again. Okay.
That's all right. We're at 11:45 and we met our time constraints, considering two really content-rich presentations. Would also like to do the last 2 seconds on unfinished business. Our newsletter, which I hope you've been pleased with the new look for the VaCCRA newsletter rather. We'll be working on the summer edition with a deadline for contributions June 1st, stretched to June 15th. That allows everybody to get their stuff in and we take a look at it and line it up and make sure that it meets the requirements for our designer. So please send those items in. We will post the requirements for submission to the newsletter on the website, or if you wish, contact me or Claudia and ask for those submission items to be sent to you. We're really pleased with how well the newsletter's been received, and it's primarily it's our recruiting tool for presentations to communities. In fact, this afternoon we have another meeting at Covenant Woods, and our speaker today is one of our residents who is a precinct chief for a voting precinct here in Hanover County. And she will be presenting what you need to know about voting, A to Z, including registering, how to apply for an absentee ballot, what kinds of documentation you need if you go to, voter registration office. And we'll be providing stamped self-addressed envelopes to the Hanover County Board of Elections for people who want to put their materials in. And Naomi will be there with her computer to show people how to do this online. So hopefully, I don't ever want to have 2 meetings in a day again, but it couldn't be avoided. So we will go from there. Our October meeting is, of course, on October 14th. And that will come out in email. We also have our summer board meeting, July 22nd. So we'll follow up with an email on that as well. And that will be for board members. Any questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you so much. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.